Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Reverend Michelle Buhite, the minister of this congregation. We are so glad you have chosen to join us in worship. As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on occupied land that once belonged to the First Nations people of this region, the Haudenosaunee. We begin our worship together by lighting the flaming chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, that embodies the light of reason and the search for truth and meaning, the warmth of friendship and community, and the fire of our commitment to bring more justice and compassion to a hurting world. If you have a chalice or simple candle at home, please prepare to light it as we light our shared chalice. We meet on holy ground, for that place is holy where we meet each other, where lives touch, where love moves, where hope stirs. How strong is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into the lives of those we meet and their welcome into our own. We kindle our chalice, a bowl of light, reflecting that eternal light which shines always around and before us. I am happy to report that my big fat yellow tulips survived the surprise snowstorm. The mini daffodils, not so much. The redbud tree that we planted in our front yard a few years ago to commemorate 30 years of marriage is living up to its name. Spring has sprung, the grass has riz, and my neighbor's newly poisoned lawn is just a driveway away from the doggy water dish and home for a gnome sign on our dandelion-abundant lawn. Sometimes loving the world is just plain tiring. But that's why we're here today, to love the world, to remind ourselves that beauty will rise, not to be seen and admired, but in response to and celebration of life. The birds are back, welcoming the sun and waking the cats at 4 a.m. The impulse to mark this moment, to commemorate the time, is as old as humanity. The cycle of the seasons is easily tracked where we live, whether or not we engage in the planting and harvesting of more than ideas. My ancestors, Celts and Scandinavians, left evidence of the tracking of time, whether in runestones, oak groves, or stone monuments, etching their understanding of the passage of time for future generations. And we, tied to our laptops and iPads, cell phones and video games, we barely look out our windows to notice the shadow of a hawk's soaring flight. How often do our toes actually touch the manicured lawns we spend so much time and effort maintaining? What are we becoming? I call us to worship. I call us to a time that is not now and a place that is not here. I call us to the place within place and the time beyond time, to the eternal, the true present, here and now, together. Rein in your attention. Set down that coffee mug and let your hands lie quiet on your lap. Allow your eyelids to flutter closed and breathe in the first full breath of this day. Sitting alone at the table or in your living room, you are not alone. We have gathered. We have assembled ourselves in our various configurations, and we are here.
In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. And all the while, the earth is holding us all.
As hard as this year of pandemic separation has been, one of the gifts has been to discover musicians and other artists who are creating meaning and beauty in the midst of so much uncertainty and loss. When Heather Pearson's song, All the While, appeared in my Facebook feed, I almost didn't click on it. I had plans for the music for this week. Then I thought about some of her other pieces that we've woven into worship, and I set down my big plans and I opened my heart. And I have been listening to that song over and over all week. I love the simplicity, and I love the truth. In the air, I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water, I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire, I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. All the while, the earth is holding us all. Air, water, fire, and earth, the elements that make up life on earth, whose harmonious balance creates and sustains the patterns and systems that we depend on for our very existence. It was this awareness of interdependence that moved our ancestors to mark the time, the cycles and seasons. On the Celtic wheel of the year, we are at Beltane, the cross quarter that marks the midpoint between the vernal equinox and the summer solstice. Each of the points along the wheel of the year, approximately 6 weeks apart, indicate a threshold from one part of the agricultural year to the next. As with all good systems for marking the march of days, there are deities, rites, and rituals associated with each of the spokes along the wheel. Beltane, or Beltane, is a frisky festival. The earth awakens, the birds, bees, and buds are all aflutter. After the long, cold, and dark winter, life unfolds in color and fragrance.
Our Sunday morning milepost, a lasting impression from a foregone 1st of May. The season actually begins in March, but there was a time this day marked the true spring awakening, May Day. And it was here long before any association to arms or the military or intimidating superpowers. At its center, the maypole. Perhaps you recall it. Maybe you even danced around one. The tradition spans centuries and continents, with its origins as varied as the costumes. Popular at campgrounds as well as campuses, the maypole even did a cameo on the lawn of the White House. You can also find the maypole on the cover of magazines, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, Better Homes and Gardens.
There we go, keep going.
These days it's a faded custom, but in a few places across the country there are signs of a comeback. In fact, at Bryn Mawr College near Philadelphia, it's never gone away. That's Katharine Hepburn when she was a Bryn Mawr student in 1928, performing in a May Day play.
In many countries and cultures, the old ways of waking the earth and celebrating the return of fertility and abundance are still celebrated, although more in the spirit of honoring tradition than in a sense of responsibility for the mutuality with the earth. Not many of us worry that the sleeping earth will forget to wake up if we neglect to go outside and stomp around with walking staffs and bells. Although there is a whisper of that belief in a deep connectedness when we carry an umbrella to ensure it won't rain. Maybe we have more influence over the elements than our rational modern minds can fully comprehend. One of the beloved and friskier elements of Beltane is the practice of dancing around a maypole. A hearty, long, beribboned pole is planted into the soft, awaiting earth, and that union is coaxed and celebrated as young people dance and weave intricate patterns around the pole. Earth-spirited traditions are so earthy. What I love about the traditions around the Wheel of the Year is that they are meant to ground us, to keep us connected to the earth that creates and sustains life. We spend so much time in our heads trying to figure out the mysteries of the universe, and earth-spirited ways invite us to press our ears close to the ground and listen for the heartbeat of all of life.
then morning into praise. Alleluia. And for dirges anthems raise. Alleluia. Our spirits soar and sing. Alleluia. Our hearts leap with the spring.
This reading is called Earth Teach, from the Ute Indians. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me caring as parents who secure their young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
The living tradition we share draws from many sources, including spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Thus reads the sixth source that informs and infuses Unitarian Universalism. This source was added to our list of sources amid controversy and considerable debate at the 1995 General Assembly. It may not seem controversial to us to consider useful the teachings of those traditions that teach us to live in harmony with the earth and with nature, but there was indeed controversy and passionate opinions on all sides of the issue. Let me offer a frame for understanding the unease which met the sixth source that informs and influences Unitarian Universalism. But first, some history. Both Unitarianism and Universalism have roots in antiquity, in early expressions of humanism among the Greeks and Romans, as well as Judaism and Christianity. Both halves of our faith family, Unitarianism and Universalism, began as Christian doctrinal statements, understandings about the nature of God, and they were both deemed heretical with the rise of orthodoxy following the Council of Nicaea in 325 of the Common Era. What doctrines did they represent? Unitarianism spoke to the unity of God and was found to be heresy since it rejected the divinity of Jesus. Universalism refers to universal salvation and was a rejection of the idea of hell and eternal punishment, also a heresy. These ideas that humans have inherent worth and nobility, that the source of life and love is singular, and that a loving God, by definition, could not condemn any part of creation to eternal torment, were as tenacious as dandelions and simply could not be stamped out, although the Orthodox Church did its very best to do so. By the end of the Renaissance and well into the Reformation, both Unitarianism and Universalism had regained footing as liberal expressions of Christianity with strong humanistic tendencies. Later, toward the mid-19th century, through a good piece of the 20th century, humanism took strong root in Unitarian circles, and when our two faiths merged in 1961, it caused some concern that Universalism, which still identified as a liberal Christian sect, was not compatible with the strongly humanistic Unitarianism. A short statement of principle was created that included the generic phrase, "and love to God and man." Now move forward to 1981 and the rise of feminism in our merged faith family, and the recognition of principles that spoke of God in only masculine terms, as well as concepts of brotherhood and mankind, and it was clear that it was time to revisit our principles. It was 1985 when the 7 principles that we know and affirm became part of our unifying language and direction, and 5 sources were named as foundational to our faith: our direct experience, words and deeds of prophetic people, wisdom from world religions, Jewish and Christian teachings, and humanistic teachings of science and reason. It took an additional 10 years to come around to adding our 6th source, affirming earth-centered traditions, and the impetus to do so again came from feminist voices in our movement. Women's spirituality, with its emphasis on women's experience and the feminine principle of the divine, had been growing steadily since the mid-1960s, with the rise of neo-paganism, Wicca, and a hunger for an experiential, embodied faith. These are spiritual paths and disciplines that provide a direct connection to the rhythms and cycles of the earth through an embodied spirituality. Dancing, chanting, and rituals to celebrate the Earth's quarter and cross-quarter days, known as the Wheel of the Year. The Wheel of the Year incorporates the quarter days, the solstices and equinoxes, as well as the cross-quarter days that fall between the solstices and equinoxes in approximately 6-week intervals. Former Unitarian Universalist Association President William Schultz has said that the emergence of feminist and earth-centered spiritualities in the 1980s laid the basis for a new kind of Unitarian Universalism, and that there were at least 5 implications. That the religious experience is personal and found in ordinary experience, that personal religious experience can be shared in community, that creation is whole, that human beings are not rulers or even stewards of nature, but co-creators with all living things, and that from this kind of spirituality flows a commitment to peace and justice. Do you remember the movie The Shining? Jack Nicholson's character is slumped over a typewriter, manically typing over and over again. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Well, we have our own version of that. All reason and no ritual makes Unitarian Universalists dull and lopsided. We cannot live forever in our heads. We are embodied creatures and we crave experience. Yes, too much experience without some cool-headed reason can throw us out of balance as well, but we are in no danger of getting to that point anytime soon, and I promise I will let you know if we get perilously close. We put a lot of stock in reason and rationality, and I am by no means advocating irrationality, but there is another option: transrationality. In the book, A Chosen Faith, Forest Church shares these words. When reason is reduced to rationality, it can become an idol. We lose track of the spirit even of such documents as the Humanist Manifesto by focusing on the letter. The more legalistic thinkers among us believe that in order to be intellectually legitimate, any opinion we hold, religious or otherwise, must be verifiable as fact. Such people resemble fundamentalists of the right. They are fundamentalists of the left. Such people hold that anything that is not rational is irrational and therefore is to be rejected. A sound reason knows its own limitations. It suggests that beyond the rational lies a trans-rational realm. We enter it in our dreams. We enter it in moments of worship. We enter it singing when the tunes are good, even if the words are not. We enter it in lovemaking and dancing and stargazing. We break through to a trans-rational realm beyond knowing or naming. We are not made to only think about things. We are meant to experience our world, and experience can lead us into new relationships with ourselves, each other, and that which is beyond our knowing, but not beyond our imagination. The dualistic notion that we are somehow separate from all of nature, as lords over creation, and separated by our very humanity from the mystery, is really a fairly new idea. Most indigenous peoples share a common thread of a spiritual connection to nature as Earth Mother. They recognize the earth as giver and sustainer of life, and have named the deep connection as holy. Again, borrowing from Forest Church, a sense of the earth as a touchstone of the sacred, indeed as holy ground, comes before Judaism and Christianity, before the other world religions, before all the philosophers of humanism. One sure proof of authentic religious experience is the combination of humility and awe. Our encounter with nature inspires both. Though earth-centered traditions range from simple to complex, from tribal to universal, each taps a power that no book or creed can begin to approximate, the power of creation. Now, lest you dismiss all of that as primitive religious thinking, or worse, irrationalism, let me remind you that there are things we simply cannot know or quantify, the realm of trans-rationalism. We experience things that defy rational analysis, stargazing, lovemaking, and dreaming. We turn to the language of symbol and metaphor to explain our experience, or we simply give up with a sheepish, I can't really explain it, I just know what I experienced. If we exclude the trans-rational realm from our field of contemplation, we delude ourselves. Forest Church says that we may begin to presume that we understand, even control, powers completely beyond our control and understanding. We then lose our sense of humility, taking the creation for granted, rather than receiving it with fear and trembling as an undeserved, unfathomable gift. Whenever knowledge supplants mystery, our imagination and sense of wonder are just as likely to die as are the gods that we pride ourselves for disbelieving. Having dismissed the supernatural, we may miss discovering the super in the natural.
In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. In the water I feel the movement that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call. And all the while, the earth is holding us all. In the air I hear the whisper of the promise that every life holds. that dares me to rise up and be bold. In the fire I sense a yearning to listen and answer the call, and all the while, the earth is holding us all, and all the while, the earth is holding us all.
We embody the elements. We are deeply connected to the earth and to all of life. This recognition that we are one with one another and with the earth creates ethical consequences. Our connection to earth-centered traditions creates a commitment to care for the earth and our environment. Generations of Unitarian Universalists have worked for peace and justice, and now we have added to that a reverence for the earth and activism that includes environmental protection. That is part of the spiritual legacy that we are passing on to our children. My mentor, David Bumbaugh, expresses this commitment to the interdependent web most eloquently. He writes, "We are called to define the religious and spiritual dimensions of the ecological crisis confronting the world, and to preach the gospel of a world where each is part of all, where every one is sacred and every place is holy ground, where all are children of the same great love, all embarked on the same journey, all destined for the same end." Earth-spirited paths do not just affect our thinking, they affect our being and our doing. They remind Unitarian Universalists that we would do well to become a more embodied faith, respecting the power of ritual and the importance of beauty, living more fully in our bodies, and therefore more respectful of our earth, Gaia. Honoring our connection to the earth and her creatures has an impact on every part of our lives. We make ethical decisions regarding our diet, the fibers we put on our bodies, how and where we invest our money, the cars we drive, the energy that powers and heats our homes. Everything about the nuts and bolts of our lives is influenced by our connection to the planet. The idea that the earth is a living being, Gaia, is not something that some starry-eyed romantic made up. New scientific discoveries have made it abundantly clear that we do not live on a dead rock. Our planet is a living system, and we are just one species among many. If we truly believe that we are part of an interdependent web, how can we choose to add to the destruction? How can we make choices that don't contribute to the conservation of non-renewable resources? Our faith demands that we live within our planetary means, in harmony with the rhythms of nature. If we want to heal Mother Earth, we must first heal ourselves. What does that self-healing look and feel like? Well, it has to do with living in our whole bodies, not just our minds. It's about finding our center, that calm and connected place within, the stillness that is more profound than mere silence. Healing ourselves begins with humility and awe, recognizing that we are not self-derived. We are a part of something far larger than our finite lives or our pitiful attempts to understand the immensity of the life that swirls in, through, and all around us. I find my center outdoors, although I am by no means a nature girl. I despise camping, and I am not fit enough for rock climbing or other high-adventure activities. But I am able to find my center outdoors, taking quiet walks in the woods, listening to the rustling of the leaves on the path, feeling the warmth of the sun on my back and the wind in my hair. I am drawn to water, streams, rivers, lakes. I try to take the time to walk the trails behind the church, to renew my mind and connect the overly cerebral nature of my work with some embodied gratitude. I pray that you find your center, to heal yourself, that together we might begin to heal Mother Earth. The spiritual gifts of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature seem like a good place to start. If that all just sounds too cerebral, just take yourself to the Ecology Center beyond our parking lot and spend some time surrounded by birdsong and the heady scent of lilacs. It will do your spirit good.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky where the stars forever have lain, where the stars, where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end, my sight as deep as the sea, beating my heart sounds the measures of old that the love's eternity, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
We close this time of worship as we extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Reverend Frederick E. Gillis provides this benediction to bless the time we have shared together. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Thank you for joining us in worship today. Please see the credits at the end of this service for information about the music and other worship elements. And do take a moment to visit our website, uuamherst.org, and click on the giving link, or text your gift to 833-987-1968. Your generosity in online giving is the virtual equivalent of passing the offering plate. Thank you in advance for your generosity. For members of UU Amherst watching this service on Sunday, May 2nd, remember that there is a special congregational meeting today at noon. See your email for the Zoom invitation and plan to attend.
Travel on. behind.